It is the final hiatus edition of PFT Live, at least for this cycle. We start back on Monday on Peacock, 7 a.m. Eastern, NBCSN re-air, 9 a.m. Eastern. Sky Sports, I'm told, Sky Sports Action, which I think will become Sky Sports NFL when the season begins. 5 o'clock UK time. We will be back and ready to go on Monday. Can't wait. 4 weeks is perfect. 5 weeks, a little more perfect. 7 weeks, too damn long for us to be gone, and we can't wait to get back. Plenty of things happening in the NFL. Today, let's go over some of the biggest stories currently dominating the landscape of professional football. We saw 2 preseason games last night, Steelers at Eagles, Washington football team at the New England Patriots. I shared my thoughts last night on PFT about how strange it was to see a bearded Daniel Snyder actually at the game. As Albert Breer of SI.com pointed out, kind of makes you wonder what leave of absence really means, kind of makes you wonder what the penalty really was as a result of the WFT investigation that was conducted by Beth Wilkinson. Didn't become a written report. No facts, no transparency, no information regarding the allegations or the proven evidence made available to anyone. Makes it easier for the NFL and Snyder to just go forward as if nothing happened, other than, of course, that $10 million that he had to pay, along with $7 million in legal fees. But my point for today, for now, he's got a pretty damn good football team that he technically isn't running for however long that may last, and whether or not the commissioner does or doesn't have to approve his return. They are quietly putting together a contender. One of the big reasons, Ron Rivera, a 2-time coach of the year, one of the more underrated coaches in football. He is making that team better than the individual parts would suggest. And by the way, the individual parts are improving too. The only thing they really need is a young quarterback who can become a franchise guy. Ryan Fitzpatrick, a stopgap for now. Taylor Heineke, in my opinion, not the answer. Played well in the postseason last year against the Buccaneers, almost said Patriots, still can't get past that. Wherever Tom Brady goes, I feel like it is the Patriots. Played well against the Buccaneers, but he played with kind of a reckless abandon that I don't think is sustainable for a full season. You're going to get injured when you play like that all the time. So they need someone, and maybe they'll find someone, or maybe they'll just go veteran while they have all these other pieces around. Beginning with Chase Young, who just in one moment last night, he just flashed for one play. And he talked about after the game that he's been working on some of his technique in the offseason. PFT commenter suggested that it looked like Chase Young teleported through the blocker. It really is amazing. You have to watch it over and over again. I don't know how he slipped past him, but he did, and he got to Cam Newton. And I think that is just a sign of what is to come this year as Chase Young develops into even more of a force in his second season than he was last year when he became the NFL's Defensive Rookie of the Year. You got Montez Sweat on the other side. You have a very potent front seven. I continue to believe that Washington is the team that the Buccaneers should not want to see in the postseason. And they are the team, I believe, most likely to disrupt a potential / likely Packers-Buccaneers rematch for the NFC Championship. The Saints may have something to say about it. Maybe one of the teams from the NFC West can rise up and make a difference. Maybe the Rams, who knows? But I think in a single elimination setting, I think the Washington football team has the pieces necessary to keeping Tom Brady from getting back to the Super Bowl again and winning it for an 8th time. The Patriots will get to see Tom Brady week 4, Sunday night, NBC, huge game. Brady back in Gillette Stadium. Who will the starting quarterback be? You got 3 preseason games, and then you have 3 regular season games, which are essentially preseason games in advance of the biggest regular season game to ever be played at Gillette Stadium. Make no mistake about it. Despite all the great games they've had over the years in that stadium that opened in 2002, Tom Brady coming back with the defending Super Bowl champion team around him is the biggest game that has ever happened at Gillette Stadium, and probably the biggest game that ever will happen at Gillette Stadium, unless Brady somehow ends up on an AFC team and that team comes into Gillette Stadium for a playoff game, or unless Brady somehow ends up capping his career by returning to the New England Patriots. Wouldn't that be something? Never really thought about that before. I think it's highly unlikely. What is likely, though, is that Cam Newton will be the starter heading into the regular season, but Mac Jones showing me enough to make me think it will be him at some point. Whether Newton is ineffective, we saw him get benched a couple of times last year. He had the COVID issue in 2020 that derailed what I thought was a potentially promising season for him and the Patriots. They're better all around, especially offensively, than they were last year. And I think that Mac Jones, and what I look for in preseason football with young quarterbacks, do they look the part? Do they look like they belong? Does the game look too big for them? Are they making quick decisions? Are they running the offense efficiently? Does it seem like a veteran, or does it seem like a player who is still wet behind the ears, or is he, as Sims would say, wise beyond his ears? He's butchered both of those at some time or another. I've gotten numb to it, frankly, but I quickly got numb to the notion that Mac Jones was a rookie. He does look the part. And you know what's strange? At Alabama, and I don't know whether this was an equipment manager thing or Mac Jones needing to work on his diet or whatever the case may be, he just didn't look right in his uniform. He didn't look like a high-end athlete. Looked a little lumpy, looked a little misshapen. That's gone now. So either he's gotten himself into NFL body shape, or they've come up with a way to put a uniform on him that better fits. He looks like an NFL quarterback, and he played like an NFL quarterback last night. It's one preseason game, I know. It was backups, I know. I get it. Completed 13 and 19 passes. Should have been 14 because there was a pass that was completed, ruled incomplete on the field. Bill Belichick didn't bother to throw the red flag. He doesn't care. It's preseason. He gets it. He knows what it is. He knows what it isn't. I've been preaching that for the past week. Understand what the preseason is. Understand what the preseason is not. It is not meaningful football. It is not real football. It is practice, and it gives us a chance to see how some of these young players look when they're in the closest thing they're going to see to a regular season game. This is it. This is the dress rehearsal. This is the opportunity. The lights are on. The cameras are there. People are watching. How do you perform in that setting? And I've even made suggestions. It's been several years since I threw this out there, and Twitter threw it right back at me like a rotten egg. I said, hey, look, if we're going to complain about the preseason being meaningless, because it doesn't count. Everybody why do you even keep standings? Who cares? You see them in the newspaper to the extent they're still earning newspapers, to the extent they have space in the sports page, to the extent there is a sports page where they can have the standings for the preseason. Who gives a crap at this point what the preseason standings are? I made the argument 6-7 years ago. When you look at the long list of tiebreakers for postseason positioning, and there are like 12 factors, something like that. The last one is coin flip. That's the very last one. Coin flip, like what the hell? Now, it never gets to that point, but I've argued if we want to give the preseason just a tiny little sliver of meaning, just a tiny little sliver of relevance, let's bump coin flip down one more spot and put preseason record in there. People lost their minds. So make up your mind, Twitter. What do you really think of the preseason? Are you mad when I say it's meaningless? Are you mad when I say it has meaning? Or are you just mad at anything and everything you hear because that's just the way that cesspool of social media is? Maybe that's the right answer to the question. All right, next topic. Saturday, we will see the San Francisco 49ers hosting the Kansas City Chiefs, kind of a stark reminder of what may have been in Super Bowl 54. Trey Lance not playing with the starters. Jimmy Garoppolo starts. Kyle Shanahan, the coach of the 49ers, said Thursday that Lance will get about 30 snaps. And one thing that became very clear to me, and I already knew this, but it's becoming more and more obvious as we get closer to whenever it is that Trey Lance will play. Kyle Shanahan has changed. He's had a mid-career pivot away from wanting a robot who will run the offense exactly the way Shanahan says, from how you do your drop, how you make your reads, how you move your arms, how you move your head, when you throw the ball, who you throw the ball to. It's like remember the old Atari that had the joystick that was straight up? It's like that's what Shanahan's trying to do with his quarterback. That's how it used to be. Shanahan, to his credit, changing with the times. because the best quarterbacks in today's NFL will run that play if it's there. And with Shanahan, far more often than not, the play that he's designed and then dialed up at the right moment against the right defense in the right circumstance, it does work. But in the event that it doesn't work, what do you have? With the former type of Shanahan quarterback, what you had was a guy who couldn't do anything. Kirk Cousins, he can't do anything when the walls close in on the first play. That's well established. That is factual. Shanahan has now pivoted to the guy who can make chicken salad out of that situation, potentially. That's what he's looking for in Trey Lance. That's why he ultimately decided on Lance over Mac Jones, we think. I still have a theory that there's someone in that 49ers organization that knows how to get Shanahan to come to a certain conclusion and believe along the way that he came to that conclusion. He wasn't nudged there by anyone else. How else do you explain him giving up on his desire to get Kirk Cousins in 2018 free agency and accept giving up a second-round pick to get Jimmy Garoppolo? He didn't want Jimmy Garoppolo. Someone talked him into it, or at least talked him to the point where he talked himself into it and believed it was his decision. Same thing in the shift from Mac Jones to Trey Lance. So now he's got Lance. And he was talking openly about Lance needing to know when to run, Lance needing to know how to protect himself, when to slide, how to slide, when to go out of bounds. These are things that are all instinctive. And this is what makes it so significant from my perspective. Shanahan is swapping out an obsession with planning and execution, and everything is determined before the snap, for an athlete who can maybe do certain things in the moment when it all goes to crap. The kind of quarterback he didn't want in 2017 when he didn't take a careful look at Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. Could have had either one. We give the Bears a hard time, rightfully so, for trading up from 3-2 to get Mitchell Trubisky. Nobody ever says boo about the fact that the 49ers were there at number 3 and could have had Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. Mahomes, clearly the guy you'd rather have based upon accomplishments, overall performance, and broader circumstances currently. But I think that's haunted Shanahan. I think the decision last year to tell Tom Brady no thank you when he wanted to come home and play for the 49ers has haunted him. And that's what prompted this move up this year, giving up 3 first-round picks and a third-round pick to get Lance. And this is where it ties back to Mac Jones. We're going to find out starting Saturday night whether or not Trey Lance looks the part. We already know Mac Jones does. And I know that maybe the Patriots would have had some information or a hunch or whatever and would have traded ahead of the 49ers and kept them from getting Mac Jones at number 12. I have a feeling Mac Jones would have been there at 12. So it's Lance or it's Mac Jones plus 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick that you could have used on other players. There's going to be an apples-to-apples comparison between those guys, and it's going to begin this weekend when we see what Lance does tomorrow night, and we compare that to what Jones did, even though it's preseason and it doesn't count, even as the last tiebreaker before they flip a coin to determine who does and doesn't get into the playoffs. The Bills Stadium issue has been in the news for the past couple of weeks, and there have been reports and counter reports and a suggestion that the Bills want a fully taxpayer-funded stadium. Some have disputed that. Look, regardless of what it is, it's clear the Bills want a large amount of public money for the new stadium that they hope to get and stay put in Buffalo. The stadium they're in opened in 1973. It's obsolete. It's time for a new one. And the AP reported on Thursday night that the price tag is $1.4 billion. There aren't many things I'm sure of in life, but I am sure of this. Whatever the initial price tag is that's placed on a new stadium, it's going to go up. It inevitably will be higher. We've seen that with every stadium that's been built in recent years. So if it's 1.4, that means get ready for 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8. Who knows? And by the time they sign the paperwork, it's going to be higher. By the time they break ground, it's going to be higher. By the time they finish it with whatever unforeseen developments may happen as they're building the stadium. It's going to get higher. The question becomes, and this is as simple as it can be, and I think Bills fans get it. And I think Bills fans, even though they want to shout down any talk of a potential relocation, I think they understand that if that stuff happens behind the scenes, if that stuff happens in darkness, it's more likely that we get to a point where the Bills pack up the Mayflowers and roll out of town like the Colts literally did in 1984 when they left Baltimore and moved to Indianapolis. It can happen that quickly. Or it can be something that's decided and everyone lies about it like they did in St. Louis when the Rams lied and lied and lied and lied, and they involved the league office based upon testimony that's been released from the lawsuit filed by various St. Louis interests regarding the Rams relocation, lied and lied and lied and lied and lied. So the more that it's paid attention to, the more that it's reported on, the more that it's discussed, the harder it will be for the Bills to kind of quietly just pack up and leave. And it will become harder for them to lie and lie and lie and lie and lie about what they plan to do. But it comes down to this, plain and simple. And I understand that for now it's negotiation. And it is. You got to have a negotiation. You can't show up and say, if you're the Bills, we are going to stay in Buffalo no matter what, no matter how much or how little taxpayer money you give us, we're staying. We're not moving. We're going to get this new stadium. And if we have to pay for it ourselves, we'll pay for it. You give us whatever you want. No, that's not how it works. Because if you do that, you know what you get? You get nothing. Stephen Ross went through that in Miami. I've mentioned that recently. When the stadium needed upgrades in order to get back in the Super Bowl rotation, he tried and tried and tried to get the state and the city and the county to pay for part of it. Ultimately, he had to pay for all of it because he had no leverage. He wasn't going to move the team. So if you're the Bills, you got to have that arrow in the quiver, even if you never fire it. And what it comes down to is, what's the bottom line that the Bills will take? How much will they pay on their own? How much will the league kick in? How much will PSLs be part of it? How little taxpayer money will they accept as part of a deal to build a stadium? Then on the other side, how much will the public entities contribute? State and county, in this case, Erie County and the state of New York. And there are new dynamics now with Andrew Cuomo about to exit as the governor, Kathy Hochul taking over, an election campaign looming for next year, a primary and a general election. How will that affect things? At the end of the day, it's the old Venn diagram. Do you remember that from school? The two circles. All they got to do, they don't have to intersect. They don't have to overlap. They don't have to cross. All they got to do is right there. If you can find that moment where the two circles kiss, you got a deal. If you can't, you got a problem. And see, the news that first emerged a couple of weeks ago from the Buffalo News, the report that the Bills want the entire stadium to be funded by taxpayer money. I know there's a belief that that was leaked by the governmental entities, but it helps the Bills because what it did as a practical matter, it put every other city out there on notice that if you're willing to potentially be a pawn in the negotiation between the Bills and Buffalo, and you go into that with your eyes open, hey, look, you know what? There's a chance you're going to spend a lot of time and effort and money putting together a proposal to build us a stadium with a large amount of taxpayer money. And at the end of the day, it's just going to be the thing that wakes the people up in Buffalo, in Erie County, and in New York to do what needs to be done. But sometimes there's value in being that pawn. You know, I think at some point the NFL is going to expand within the next 10 years. I think it will. If you're a city that willingly plays along with the effort to get maximum taxpayer money for the Bills to stay in Buffalo, if you understand you're just playing a role here and you're doing it because there may be a future opportunity for your city and you'll be viewed far more favorably by the powers that be because you did help the Bills get the stadium they wanted, get the deal they wanted, that could help one of those cities, whichever it is. And, you know, Austin's been mentioned. I'm not buying Austin, but there are plenty of other cities out there that could want a team. Now, St. Louis, probably not at the top of the list for a potential NFL franchise, given the lawsuit that has St. Louis in a position where the tiger is caught by the tail. But it could be that part of the eventual settlement is St. Louis gets a team. And maybe along the way, St. Louis puts together a proposal that would lure the Bills from Buffalo. But until the deal is done, until the paperwork is signed, until they've broken ground on the stadium, unfortunately, Bills fans have to worry about that. And this is a cloud that moves from city to city. It hovered over Minnesota for a while. And in fact, it required some pretty frank comments by Art Rooney to the legislators there that, hey, if you guys don't do this, the team's going to move. But it hovered over Minnesota for a while until they got their new stadium. It hovered over cities who ultimately lost their teams. It hovered over St. Louis. And there were a lot of people in St. Louis that were in denial. They got mad anytime you mentioned the possibility of the Rams moving. And they ultimately moved. San Diego, Oakland. So that's just the game. That's how it works. And right now the focal point is Buffalo. And once we get through Buffalo, it eventually we'll go somewhere else. It'll go to Carolina, where David Tepper is going to want public money. And I can't overemphasize the point that it is a business, plain and simple. And yes, we love our fans. We love our city. We love our home. But if they don't love us back enough, we're going to go somewhere else where they love us a little bit more. I wish I could remember the exact quote. There's an episode of The Office where Dwight Schrute is considering another opportunity until he gets on the phone and completely pisses off the guy who's interviewing for the position. But he said that he values loyalty, and his loyalty is a major attribute. And he will go to whichever employer values loyalty the most. And that's how it works in the NFL. The owners are going to go wherever it makes the most sense from a business standpoint. And the Bills will leave Buffalo if at the end of the day, the public bodies won't do enough relative to what someone else will do. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to answer some questions as we wrap up the final PFT Live hiatus of at least 2021. We'll be on hiatus again next year, hopefully not for quite as long. I'm buying time as I scroll for the tweet. Here we go. Let's see what we have. James McDonough, also known as Dr. J144 on Twitter. How do you think Peyton Manning would do as the commissioner? Personally, I look at guys like Ozzie Newsome, John Lynch, John Elway, et cetera, and think high-level people can generally figure out high-level jobs. I believe that at some point, the commissioner will not be a football lifer. I think at some point, the business is going to be too big. The issues are going to be too challenging. And the NFL is going to realize that it needs a CEO. And we see all the time CEOs move around from company to company, different industries. See, it's a skill set that's transferable if you know how to be the leader of an organization. Whatever widget it is that the company makes, whatever service it may provide, whatever line of business it is in, at the very top, when you are talking about the chief executive officer and the dynamics of that business, that's where that unique skill set comes into play. Now, with the NFL, the board of directors that you have to deal with are the 32 owners. And I wonder if the owners wouldn't view Peyton Manning as having too strong of a personality, being too committed to taking over. See, Roger Goodell, to a certain extent, and I think this applies to his predecessors as well, he just run interference for whoever holds the real power among ownership at any given time. As Tom Curran said years ago, and I still use this, Roger Goodell is the world's highest paid pincushion. He takes the heat for the folks who would prefer to hide behind the curtain, setting policies that may be unpopular. Part of what they pay the commissioner to do is to be the person who takes the flack, takes the heat, happily does so, instead of the people who are the ones making the decisions about what the league is going to do. So I think Peyton Manning would be too good for the job because Peyton Manning quite possibly would not be afraid to say things to the owners that the owners don't want to hear. So, but I'm convinced that Manning will be highly successful at whatever it is that he chooses to do. And he would make a hell of a lot of money as the commissioner, and his name would be imprinted on every single football, which I'm sure has value to a guy like Peyton Manning. I just don't know that the owners would want to surrender so much authority and control to a guy who has a very well-earned reputation for taking control, unless you can get the owners to realize it's in their best interest to just give the keys to the car to Peyton and let him take the car as far as he possibly can, because I think he would do a phenomenal job as the NFL commissioner. Tom G. Post on Twitter says, if you were Howie Roseman and had only the information that's publicly available, would you let the Jalen Hurts experiment play out or pull the plug and make the trade for Watson? Also, hi, Tom. I wouldn't trade for Deshaun Watson right now because, number one, the Texans want too much. And number two, there's a possibility he's going to be indicted. There's a possibility he's going to be put on paid leave. And until this criminal case ends, there is still a possibility, slim as it may be, as high as the bar is for a criminal prosecution, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, to trigger a conviction. I'm not comfortable. I can live with the uncertainty that comes from the civil lawsuits. Whether or not I can live with the allegations, the admissions, the behavior, that's a different issue. That's for ownership to decide. From a football standpoint, though, the possibility of a prosecution, conviction, incarceration, that concerns me. Because, look, executives and coaches rarely make judgments based on morals and ethics and what's right and what's wrong. They just want football players who are available to play. And if you give up significant assets for a guy who ultimately becomes unavailable to play, you made a bad move. With the Texans not relenting in what they want, despite the uncertainty, you just can't. You got to give Jalen Hurts 1 year. And if it doesn't work out this year, by March, there should be a lot more clarity on Deshaun Watson. There should be a lot more clarity on Aaron Rodgers. There will be clarity on Russell Wilson, who I think still wants out if things don't go the way he envisions in Seattle. Not that the Eagles were one of the teams that were on his agent's list of potential destinations, but that could change. I just think what the Eagles need to do is give Hurts a year to show whether or not he can do the job. He can become the franchise quarterback that they have been obsessively trying to get. It was 2013, I think, a couple of years post Donovan McNabb, when Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the team, said our number one objective at this point is to find a franchise quarterback. They thought they may have had one, Nick Foles version 1, after the 7-touchdown, 0-pick game against Oakland. Then they thought they had one in Carson Wentz. Then they found one who won the Super Bowl MVP award, but they stuck with Wentz. Then they gave up on Wentz, and now they're pivoting to Hurts. And if it doesn't work with Hurts, I think they're gonna move on. At Lita Luke, based on last night's Patriots versus WFT game, what is a catch now? Referring to a 2-point conversion play by Washington. I'm a Patriots fan, and it seemed a clean catch. Any ideas? Thanks for the hiatus editions. Been great to keep us going in football news. I frankly haven't seen the play. I didn't watch the entire game last night, and I'm going to go watch it now. But look, the reality is in preseason, the process isn't going to be as smooth. The decisions may not be as good. Everyone involved, the officials, the replay process, they're working out the kinks as well. But I think after years of uncertainty, the NFL finally figured out what a catch is. What was it, 2017, 2018? That third foot really is the key. Getting the ball in control, in possession of the receiver, and getting 3 feet makes it so much easier to establish what a catch is. It's still got an element of know it when you see it, that whole having the opportunity to make a football move, but that third foot's a big deal. you can coach a guy instead of doing the tap, tap to do a tap, tap, tap. And after that, it's no question. It was a catch. But I'll take a look at that. Probably shouldn't have answered the question since I hadn't seen the play, but I wanted to address the broader dynamic of it's preseason for everyone. So mistakes are going to be made. Now is the time to make the mistakes before we get to the games that count. Roy, Pio or Pio? Have you missed your banter, English saying, with Chris Sims first thing in the morning? I have in London. Oh, I've missed it. And we've done 3 or 4 Wednesday editions during the hiatus. And Sims and I, when we did this on Wednesday, we agreed it's been too long. And it never does feel like drudgery. I always enjoy it, but I can't wait to get started. I mean, the only thing about it, and I don't even really do this anymore. Now that I don't have to get up at 5, I get up at 6 because I don't do the 1 hour on radio before we do the 2 hours on TV. I mean, I used to go through that couple of minutes every morning or every other morning of why the hell do I do this to myself? I don't even think that anymore. It's let's go, let's get rolling. You know, that's been for me the biggest life change. And it started July 1 of 2009 when we partnered with NBC. When I was practicing law, there were certain mornings where you just dread what you're going to have to do that day, whether it's the other lawyer that you're going to have to deal with and everything's fighting and adversarial, whether it's a judge that has you quaking in your boots, whether it's a client who's difficult, a witness that you know is going to make it impossible for you to get what you need when you question that person under oath. I roll out of bed in the morning and I'm ready to go. Let's go. And that'll be the feeling on Monday. I'll probably be up before 5 on Monday and ready to go. And ready to put on a good show and get back to it 5 days per week. So very much looking forward to it. Maximus Overdrive. What's the future outlook of the receiver market? Will it plateau? You argued that the receiver position is headed the way of the running back due to their ubiquity. Very well done. SAT word. But receivers in the modern NFL provide substantially greater value in terms of WAR and EPA per play than backs. I'm not going to get into the high-end analytics here, in part because I don't understand them. I understand this. There are many great receivers who are coming out every single year. They are better than they've ever been. It used to take 3 years before you knew what you had in a receiver. Now, for the good ones, you know right away. And there are more and more of them. And you don't have to get them in round 1. And there's part of the psychology of a receiver. It's playing out this year with Elijah Moore of the Jets. We've seen it in the past with Michael Thomas, DK Metcalf, Chase Claypool. Falling down the board out of round 1 and into round 2 becomes an excellent motivator for that receiver to not be complacent, for that receiver to be determined to do everything necessary to become a star at the next level. So I think that you're going to see teams that ask themselves, do we pay, for example, Davante Adams $25 million a year, or do we invest in young receivers via the draft? And we raised this earlier in the week with Davante Adams. Is it the presence of Aaron Rodgers that makes him so good? Do you take Aaron Rodgers out of the equation and Adams is not one of the best receivers in the NFL? Is it transferable to Jordan Love? Are you going to pay all that money to Adams to sign him long-term and have Rodgers leave after this season? These are all very relevant considerations. At Smunkadelic, awesome name. Would you rather share an Uber with Bill Belichick or Aaron Rodgers? Probably Aaron Rodgers, because the conversation would be a lot more interesting and scintillating, and it wouldn't be a bunch of grunts and a bunch of nothing. Although if you get Bill Belichick talking about something other than football, it could be very interesting. I just think that I have a lot more in common with Aaron Rodgers than Aaron Rodgers would ever realize. And I think one of the reasons that I bug Aaron Rodgers is I understand how he works. I understand how he thinks. I understand what makes him tick. And I'm able to cut through the smoke and get to the heart of what he's really saying when he says whatever it is that he says, when he does whatever it is that he does. And, I got a lot of respect for the way he does things. There are concerns that I had, months of uncertainty that put Packers fans in an awkward spot, that put teammates and coaches in the middle of his dispute with the front office. I didn't like that very much, but I understand him. And I think that if we had a chance, I doubt that I could get him to break the wall down in one Uber ride. It would have to be a long drive. It would have to be West Virginia to Green Bay potentially. But I think that if we ever had a chance to spend a time together with authenticity, with real, frank, candid conversation, break out the tequila, break out the scotch, break out, a cigar or something else that you smoke that doesn't have tobacco in it. And I think we'd find a middle ground. But I can guarantee you of one thing. It ain't ever going to happen. I'm on my scale of things I'm certain of. The Bills Stadium costing more than $1.4 billion. I am completely certain of that. Sitting down with Aaron Rodgers, not ever happening. I'm even more certain of that. Let's see. PFT PM policy. Should Cowboys fans be worried about Dak's shoulder? It was supposedly a fatigue injury that would only last a couple of days, and now there are 2 MRIs, multiple weeks out, et cetera. Yeah, I would be very concerned about it, because what we saw from Hard Knocks is you got a guy in Dak Prescott who wants to get back on the field, who wants to earn his money, who wants to be playing football, who wants to be part of the team. There's always going to be that risk that he's doing too much. And he's going to learn, along with the rest of us, that his body may not cooperate like it would have when he was 22. I mean, this is season 6 for him. He's creeping toward 30. Things may not recover as quickly. And Sims has mentioned this a couple of times during the hiatus editions of PFT Live, the lat muscle being involved in it. That's unusual. And that suggests that there's a lot of overcompensation going on as he's concerned, as he should be, whether it's conscious or not, of the right ankle. So, yeah, anytime you're calling in baseball experts for a football injury, it tells you this is not a sufficiently common football injury for football trainers to have the expertise necessary to deal with it. So yes, it should be concerning. Paul PJ5, if you had to watch/follow just one team this season, which team would it be? It's easy to say the Green Bay Packers because of the Aaron Rodgers drama, because I think it's always going to be there. I'd put the Packers in the conversation, the Buccaneers, the Patriots. I know you said just one team. Seahawks, Rams. I've already said the Rams. If it was just one team and one team only, though, I'd probably go Packers because of this Rodgers thing, because it's not over. He's back, but it's not over. And it could get fascinating this year in what could be his final year, even though they surely don't want to label it his final year. Tom Marshall, A Red Zone Out, is Zach Taylor on the hot seat this year? Well, there were plenty of rumors late in the 2020 season that he was on the way out. So many that the Bengals made the very unusual step of issuing a statement on Black Monday to say that Zach Taylor will be back. That doesn't happen very often. One of the things about the Bengals, they don't like to pay coaches to not work. Without knowing the details of the Zach Taylor contract, is it possible that his guaranteed salary only lasts 3 years? When they fired Marvin Lewis, I was surprised until I realized that the extension he signed only guaranteed him his salary through the year that he coached the team. They didn't owe him anything when they asked him to leave. I think that's a very real factor. There's 2 teams, and they couldn't be more different from their approach to paying players and their approach to soaking up publicity. The Bengals and the Cowboys, they're the 2 teams that hate paying coaches to not coach the team. So I think that's the big factor. And he's definitely on the hot seat in whatever year is the last year that he has guaranteed money. But I think they're going to be expecting to see some improvement this year, and maybe they'll break from their tradition and fire him with a year or 2 left of guaranteed salary. Vaughn AB, who are your picks for offensive and defensive rookies of the year and why? I think Micah Parsons is going to be awesome for the Dallas Cowboys. He was great in the Hall of Fame game. He's going to be around the football. If he stays healthy, I think he'll win it on the defensive side. On the offensive side, I typically gravitate toward running backs because they churn up stats, but there's so many great quarterbacks. Will it be Trevor Lawrence? Will it be Zach Wilson? Will it be Trey Lance? Will it be Justin Fields? I'm intrigued by the quarterbacks. Could it be Mac Jones? It was Justin Herbert last year. So, rookie of the year, not the quarterback presumption that MVP is, but I feel like with so many great quarterbacks coming out every year now and so many of them being thrust into the fray, maybe it tilts things in their direction. At B-Flow Faux Show, do you think Mac Jones starts before Thanksgiving week? I think he does. I think it's either because of an injury to Cam Newton or he's just ready to go. And I really do think the Patriots are focused on week 4 more than anything else. I never admit it, but they're focused on Tom Brady coming back to town. Pat Brown, if the Bucs don't win the Super Bowl this year, should or would Tom Brady retire? No, he's locked in for 2 more years. What I'm intrigued by, and I've mentioned this before in a hiatus edition of PFT Live, he continues to say I'm under contract for 2 more years. If he decides to play beyond 2022, which has been his expiration date for years now, will he go to another team? That's what I'm looking forward to finding out the answer to. So he's got 2 more years with Tampa. I'd be stunned if he retires after this season, unless he just falls off a cliff physically. And I've been told time and again, watch the legs, not the arm. The arm will be there. Watch the legs. The moment he can no longer get away from pressure, he starts getting hit. He starts getting hurt, and he starts, borrowing the quote from Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon, I'm too old for this stuff. RTAGS 39, what's the best part about having Chris Sims as your co-host? Can you put your finger on what makes you two so entertaining together? It's not for us to decide what makes us entertaining. Look, we are both real. We are both authentic. We are not pretending to debate on topics where we actually agree, but one guy's taking the other side because we're trying to contrive interesting TV. We think a lot alike. We agree on more things than we disagree. I just like the fact that he is, number one, extremely authentic. What you see is what you get. What you hear is what you get. He's got no ego from the perspective of he'll say whatever pops into his mind. He'll commit the Simsisms over and over again. And when we give him a hard time about it, he never bristles or complains or does anything. The only thing, and I think we've shown some of these clips before, when there's a technological issue, he changes into a different guy entirely. And it's entertaining because that's the only time you see him like that. So he's very easygoing, no ego. God, I hate that I'm saying all these nice things about him. But, when you have 7 weeks of not working with a guy, you realize that you've kind of stumbled into something that works well. And I pride myself on being able to work with anyone. But, it clicked 4 years ago, and here we are, and we can't wait to get back at it starting next week. At Madridista Forever 17, what's the best case scenario for the Packers with the Rodgers-Adams situation? They win the Super Bowl, trade Rodgers, and re-sign Adams. Well, the best case scenario for any team is to win the Super Bowl. Now, if they win the Super Bowl, does Rodgers stick around for 1 more year? It's kind of hard for him to have a stick up his butt about the front office if whatever the front office has put together for this season is good enough to allow him to win a Super Bowl. I think winning the Super Bowl means he sticks around. Getting to the playoffs, NFC Championship, not getting to the Super Bowl, I think that's when they trade him. And I really have a concern about re-signing Davante Adams if Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there, because Adams has made it clear he wants a ton of money. He wants to be the highest paid receiver in football. I don't think I make him the highest paid receiver if I'm not going to have Aaron Rodgers. MPM, when, yeah, they know who we mean. When are you and Sims going to make your Super Bowl picks? And do you think you can guess Sims' pick and he could guess yours? I always make my Super Bowl pick as late as I possibly can because the preseason could change everything. An injury to a quarterback like the Teddy Bridgewater injury in a late off-season, preseason practice could change everything. So we always post our picks the first day of the season, that Thursday, September 9, I think it is this year when we get started. I got mine right last year. I picked Bucs Patriots in the Super Bowl and Bucs to win it. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm on house money this year. Sims picked the Chiefs. I have a feeling he's going to pick the Chiefs again. And you know what? I may end up picking the Chiefs too. We'll see. Still got a few more weeks to wait it out. But I think that we're going to see a more determined and motivated and focused Patrick Mahomes than we saw last year or the year before. All right, I should probably wrap it up here. Let's call it. It's been a while, 50 minutes, long enough. And that's it for the hiatus brand of PFT Live and PFT PM. We are back on Peacock Monday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, NBCSN, 9 a.m. Eastern, Sky Sports Action, 5 o'clock UK time. Cannot wait to get back at it. We will be posting content all weekend long, preseason games today, tomorrow, and Sunday. Check us out around the clock each of the next 3 days, and see you at 7 o'clock on Monday morning. Have a great weekend.